All right, for this installment of our visuals, I want to talk about two famous battles that the United States is going to participate in during World War II. The first one here is in the European theater, so we're going to be fighting against the Germans in this battle. And it is one of a couple dates we're going to ask you to remember. This battle is going to take place on June 6th, 1944, and it's become known in our history as D-Day. Now, the picture that I've got here for you to begin with, though, is on June 5th, 1944. And what you see, the man on the left is General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander in the European theater. He will go on to, of course, be President of the United States in the 1950s, and he's speaking to members of the 101st Airborne. These men are going to, as part of General Eisenhower's battle plan, paratrooper in to the beaches of France as forces from the United States, Britain, Canada, and Australia attack the beaches directly. It's all part of an American blitzkrieg plan that Dwight Eisenhower has set up, and this is the invasion of mainland Europe. This battle in history is kind of the beginning of the end for Adolf Hitler. Remember, at the beginning of the war, Hitler had taken over the country of France and had run the British off of the beaches at Dunkirk. Well, this is going to be those forces coming back and trying to, again, get to Berlin, right? Trying to end the war. So June 6, 1944 is when this will happen. By the end of April in 1944, Adolf Hitler, or 1945, Adolf Hitler will be dead. And in early May, the war in Europe will be over. So it's very much the beginning of the end. What Eisenhower's explained to these guys is what they need to be doing as this attack is going to happen. If you were in person, when we were doing these visuals, we would spend some time watching the first scene from a movie called Saving Private Ryan. And it's a recreation of the attack on the D-Day beaches on June 6th. If you've got that available to you, you can stream it. It's very graphic, but guys that fought during that time said it was as close as it could be to what had actually happened. Eisenhower's going to plan this. And one of the more interesting things I think about Eisenhower is he actually had prepared two telegrams for the day. One announcing the victory and the foothold that the Allies had gained in Europe. The other, a telegram talking about how the operation had been a complete failure and taking all of the blame for it. Fortunately, he didn't have to send that one, but I think it says a lot about his character that if it had failed, he was going to take ultimate blame. But these guys were going to have an assault across the English Channel, just about 30 miles of ocean that separate England from France. And so the boats are going to come across. Now, Germany knew this is probably where the attack was going to happen. They had spent years making concrete fortresses on the coast, some of which are still there. You can still see them if you go over to France in order to beat off any kind of Allied attack. The operation itself is called Operation Overlord. This is our other visual for D-Day. If you look in the back, you'll see boats that are called Higgins boats or LSTs. And what would happen is 30 guys or a tank or jeep could drive up. Those were boats, they didn't have a top. And so it had kind of a front gate. And so when they would hit the beaches, the front gate would drop and the guys would run off, or the tank would drive off, whatever was in there. You'll see, if you watch that clip from Saving Private Ryan, these big things that look like jacks that were there, those were called Belgian mines. The Germans had put them there to keep ships from attacking at high tide. The idea is those were supposed to rip the bottom out of boats as the boats were coming in. Like I said, multinational effort. They're going to split the beaches up and they'll have different names. Utah Beach is one of the really famous ones, where the Allies try to gain a foothold in and start to, first of all liberate France, but then ultimately take the fight to Germany itself. And so D-Day really is kind of the beginning of the end of the war in Europe. I want to take you to the other side of the world, and I want to show you probably the most famous picture to come out of World War II. And this picture is taken early in the battle for Iwo Jima. And Iwo Jima is an island off of the east coast of Japan, and it was controlled by the Japanese. Nobody lived on the island of Iwo Jima. It was volcanic rock, and so it wouldn't have been hospitable. But the Japanese had been using it for the duration of the war, and they had built this system of underground tunnels underneath the island that they used to kind of move around. Another great World War II movie called Flags of Our Fathers that shows kind of the unnervingness, as the Allies are going to land, as these Americans land. They don't see any enemy soldiers. The Japanese actually wait until the Americans get on the island to try and trap them, kind of lull them into a false sense of security as they're coming in. But the most famous thing that happens during the battle is the raising of this flag. And it's the picture that gets taken. And this picture, I won't ruin the Flags of Our Fathers story for you, but there's a really interesting story behind this picture. But it's not the story that you think when you look at this, right? This looks like it's in the middle of the battle, and these guys are raising this flag heroically. And so it starts to get in all the newspapers and becomes really famous, and is going to be used in loan drives and things like that. These guys, the guys that survived the battle, are brought back to the United States, and they tour the country, kind of recreating the flag raising in different places to raise money for the war effort. And so it's a neat little, it's a story that gets even bigger than what the picture is. The reason we wanted the island of Iwo Jima was it was going to be an emergency landing strip if something went wrong on one of the atomic bomb missions. So we do take over the island of Iwo Jima. Most of the Japanese will, instead of getting captured, will commit suicide in those tunnels I was telling you about underneath the volcanic rock. And so there aren't a whole lot of them that end up leaving. The battle's like 35, 38 days, something like that. But there aren't a lot of live Japanese soldiers that come off of the island of Iwo Jima. Today, it's a deserted island still, not a place that people live or things like that. But it had an important part to play in World War II.